Imagine hijacking a plane, jumping into a freezing storm at night, and vanishing without a single confirmed trace. This is not a movie plot. This really happened. And more than 50 years later, no one knows what truly happened to the man known as D.B. Cooper. On November 24, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, a quiet man arrived at Portland International Airport. He was well-dressed, and completely unremarkable. He bought a one-way ticket to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. No one paid him any mind, and that was exactly the point. He boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305 and took his seat near the back of the plane. Shortly after takeoff, he ordered a bourbon and soda. He lit a cigarette, and then, with no emotion on his face, he handed a folded note to a flight attendant. At first, she didn't even read it. She thought it was just a phone number from a lonely businessman. Cooper leaned closer and quietly said, "Miss, you'd better read that note. I have a bomb." The note was simple and terrifying. Cooper claimed he had a bomb inside his briefcase and demanded $200,000 in cash, along with 4 parachutes. If his demands were not met, he said he would detonate the bomb. To prove he was serious, he briefly opened his briefcase. Inside, the flight attendant saw a tangle of wires and red cylinders. Whether it was real or not didn't matter. The threat was enough. The pilots were immediately informed. The FBI was alerted, and as the plane continued toward Seattle, a tense negotiation began on the ground. What made Cooper so unsettling wasn't just the threat, it was his behavior. He remained polite, calm, almost friendly. He ordered another drink and even paid for it. He showed no fear, no panic, and no signs of aggression. He was in total control. After circling the Seattle area for nearly 2 hours, Flight 305 finally landed. Waiting on the runway were FBI agents, the ransom money all in unmarked $20 bills, and the 4 parachutes Cooper had requested. The passengers were released safely. Most of them would never even realize how close they had come to disaster. But Cooper was just getting started. After receiving the money and parachutes, he ordered the crew to refuel the plane. He instructed the pilots to take off again, this time heading south toward Mexico City. His instructions were specific. Fly at a low altitude of 10,000 feet, maintain a slow airspeed, and keep the landing gear down. As night fell, the plane lifted off once more, carrying only Cooper and the flight crew. Inside the cabin, Cooper moved to the rear of the aircraft. He tied the heavy bag of ransom money to his body using parachute cords. He put on one of the parachutes, and then, somewhere over the dark, rugged forests of the Pacific Northwest, the cockpit received a warning signal. The rear stairs of the plane had been lowered. The pilots radioed back, asking if Cooper needed assistance. There was no response. At approximately 8 p.m., in freezing temperatures, heavy rain, and winds gusting over 100 miles per hour, D.B. Cooper walked down the rear stairway and jumped out of the plane. He disappeared into the blackness of the stormy night. No one saw him land. No one ever heard from him again. What followed was one of the largest and most intense manhunts in U.S. history. The FBI searched thousands of square miles of dense forests, raging rivers, mountains, and remote wilderness areas. Helicopters scanned the landscape from above. Hundreds of troops and agents combed the ground on foot. Divers plunged into the icy waters of nearby rivers. They found nothing, no body, no parachute, no clothing, not a single confirmed trace of Cooper. It was as if he had literally vanished into thin air. For years, the case went cold. It became a national obsession, a modern-day ghost story. Then, in 1980, there was a break. 9 years after the hijacking, an 8-year-old boy was on a camping trip with his family along the banks of the Columbia River. While digging in the sand to build a campfire, he uncovered 3 decaying stacks of $20 bills. When the FBI examined the money, the serial numbers were a perfect match for the ransom money given to Cooper. It was the only piece of physical evidence ever found directly linked to the crime, but instead of solving the mystery, it only deepened it. Had Cooper drowned in the river, allowing the current to carry the money downstream where it eventually washed ashore? Had he buried it there intentionally, planning to come back for it later? Or had part of the ransom simply been lost during his perilous jump? The questions piled up, but the answers remained elusive. Over the decades, the FBI investigated dozens of suspects. They looked at former paratroopers, military veterans with specialized training, career criminals, and even men who confessed on their deathbed. Some suspects had aviation experience. Others matched Cooper's physical description. A few even claimed they knew exactly where he landed and what happened to him. But in every single case, none of the evidence was strong enough. No one could be definitively proven to be D.B. Cooper. Experts remained deeply divided on his fate. Some believe Cooper undoubtedly died during the jump. The conditions that night were brutal. No experienced skydiver would willingly jump into that storm. They argue he was likely injured by the fall, got lost in the vast wilderness, and succumbed to the elements, his body never to be found. Others, however, believe Cooper was far more skilled and intelligent than the authorities initially assumed. They argue he planned the jump meticulously, knew the flight path like the back of his hand, and even selected the stormy conditions intentionally to cover his tracks. According to this theory, Cooper survived the jump, escaped the manhunt, and lived out the rest of his life under a new identity, having pulled off the perfect crime. Over time, D.B. Cooper became more than just a criminal. He transformed into a legend, a folk hero to some, Books were written about him, documentaries were filmed. His name became a permanent fixture in American folklore. To this day, he is still the only airline hijacker in US history who was never caught and whose identity remains unknown. In 2016, after 45 years of dead ends, the FBI officially closed the active investigation. They stated that there were no new credible leads and no further evidence to pursue. But the mystery remains very much alive in the public imagination. So, what do you think happened? Did Cooper die a lonely death in the forest that night? Did he drown in a cold river, his treasures scattered by the current? Or did he walk away, a free man, carrying the secret of one of the most daring crimes in history to his grave? Until undeniable proof is found, one truth remains. A man hijacked a plane, jumped into a storm, and vanished. And somewhere between the clouds and the ground, Don Cooper became the legend of D.B. Cooper. Thanks for watching. If you're fascinated by mysteries like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow for more.